Good afternoon. I keep wanting to say good morning because I've been doing these at 9 a.m., but a good afternoon. So today, as a surprise guest and the first St. Bonaventure Bonnie that I get to have on my live stream, I have Jessica Jenkins, who I got to cover when I was at St. Bonaventure as a journalist and also did a documentary on Jess. How are you?
Not too bad. It's definitely afternoon on my side of the
Yeah, it
country, though.
definitely is 3 o'clock over there. Introduce yourself to the stream, who you are, what you're doing right now, and where you at in quarantine.
Yeah, I'm Jess, like you said. I am currently in Rhode Island. So I'm an assistant coach at Providence right now. Even though I'm from Ohio, I've toyed with, driving back there, see my parents, and hang out there
Hmm.
to isolate. But have just stayed in Providence and kind of just been hanging out in my apartment, really,
Yeah,
walking a couple places, getting a little bit outside, but pretty much a lot of time in the apartment.
good, good. What I am actually going to do during our chat is, and I'll show this to people on the stream right now. I'm going to be playing the documentary that
Wow,
we got to film. This is at the beginning where it
great.
says Jessica Jenkins defining her legacy and the clap and the whole nine. I can just keep going back and forth in that shot. But I wanted to have you as the first Bonnie on my live stream for multiple reasons. One was that I think this documentary. Kind of really kickstarted my career in social media. Like I had no idea what content was outside of just like writing pieces, and this one like really opened my eyes to like how powerful video is and how powerful long form is and like what that was and the behind the scenes. And I got super lucky. This was one hell of a game. Jess, like I don't know if you
Yeah,
were.
you lucked out a little bit.
Yeah, like you scored a lot there. You broke records. Coach Crowley says some hot takes almost, right? Like in the press conference, you weren't expecting it. So
Yeah.
this was great. How was it like me following you? I don't think I've like really asked you this. How was it like me just following you and you're like, there's this dude with a camera documenting my whole day? Like, was it weird? Like, do you like it? What was going on?
Um, it was definitely a little bit out there, but
Hmm.
it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
Like you kind of just it was what I always do, like you just keep your head down and like go to work and go about your business. It was definitely the most like not awkward part, but part outside of my comfort zone was doing the voiceover stuff for it.
Yeah.
Um, I was definitely not that was not my favorite part of it. But it was cool. I mean, there wasn't a lot of that type of stuff out when you did it and when you released it, so it was pretty cool. Like now everybody does like short video stuff
Yeah.
and all of that, but a longer one was really cool, and especially at the time, I think.
Yeah, no, I really, really enjoyed doing it. You've now, since graduating, you've continued to play basketball. Talk about what happened after Bonas and what you were doing for a bit.
Yeah, so right after Bonaventure, I played 4 seasons. So like 3 full years. I played a couple different places overseas. I went to Iceland, England, and then Australia was the last stop,
You chose some
which
pretty
was
cool
pretty.
spots.
Yeah, no, I lucked out. I wish, to be honest, I do wish that I would have that Iceland wasn't the first place I went,
Hmm.
because I think that probably was the most interesting
Yeah,
place. But I was a bit homesick and
yeah.
wasn't really wanting to explore any of that. So,
Hmm.
um, I kind of wish I would have like swapped them in the order, but it was awesome. Australia was kind of the bucket list place that I wanted to play before I was done. So it worked out. Got to meet a lot of people,
Yeah.
see a lot of stuff, free
No,
travel.
for sure.
Can't beat it.
I remember actually Iceland when I saw it on Instagram. I was like, whoa, this is cool. Like it seemed like a really awesome place.
Yeah, I loved it. I would 100% go back. It's definitely much different in a lot of ways than here, but
Hmm.
it was a good first place because they all can speak English. It's not completely
Uh huh.
a language barrier or anything like that. So it was awesome, though. I would not have changed those 3 places, I don't think.
Good, good. And then, it looks like Coach Crowley got the band back, but not at Bonna. So talk to us
Did.
about your new job and how that came about.
Yeah, so the band got back together at Bonaventure for 1 season. So the first year I came back, I finished playing in Australia. Coach had a spot open up. and he asked if I wanted it, and I did think about it for a little bit, if I wanted to kind of keep playing, but at that point, playing wasn't. While I do miss it at times, it wasn't. It's not college basketball. It's completely different. So I was. It was just good, perfect timing. I was ready to make a switch and do something different. So we had a spot open up. Luckily, we were pretty good that year that I coached at Bonaventure, so it was an easy transition. And then when he took the job here at Providence, he was like, "You coming?" And I was like, "Well, I just stopped playing, so we're definitely coming," which was cool. And then I was a little bit of being thrown right into the fire, coaching in the Big East less than a year after stopping to play. So that's where we're at now, and the band is very much back together from Bonaventure.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, one of the things in the documentary that you were saying is like, I don't know, I'm not that loud. I'm not sure if people hear me, or like you always had that kind of thing. Now you're a coach and you have to be heard. How's that transition been for you?
It's still the same. I'm still not that loud, and I still don't know if people hear me.
Love
I'm
it.
definitely the quietest of our staff for sure, but we've got a good dynamic, so not everybody has to be the one that's yelling in practice and
Yeah.
doing all that. I can be the person who pulls people aside and has actual conversations. Like, obviously, there's times where I do have to get out of my comfort zone and get on people or be louder when I'm presenting and stuff like that, which has gotten better, probably at a slower rate maybe than Coach Crowley would want, but it's getting there slowly. But yeah, it hasn't changed very much from when I said that in the documentary.
So, I've always found this interesting, and the more that I, started going into my career, is that the perception that people have of somebody who needs to be a leader, needs to be vocal, you have to be loud. But I think the more that I started working with people, there is something to be said about someone who's not always so loud, but they say one or two things, but it's like really profound and it has an impact. And, I think you kind of embody that a little bit. Like the things that you say, you don't say a lot, but it has a big impact. So, how true do you think is that, like what I'm saying?
No, I think it's absolutely true. I don't know. It's hard to say I like really see that in myself, I guess, as far as, you know, things I say having a huge impact, but like you don't have to be the loudest person or
Yeah.
the most obnoxious or anything like that to get your point across. And if you hopefully when I do say something or when I am trying to make a point or presenting, people are locked in because it doesn't get lost in noise of constantly talking or constantly trying to get something across. It's okay, she's saying something, so it must be important because
Yeah.
she doesn't say very much.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that's worked out. And to be fair, like I've always been the lead by example type,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's a bit different now being a coach instead of being able to do that as a player. But I think I'm finding ways to do that still, and still lead by example, even though it's not necessarily on the floor.
So talk about that. Does that mean you're shooting around at 5 a.m. like before everybody gets in, or like, like all jokes aside, like,
Yeah.
how are you leading by example, and how is that transition?
Yeah, I think it's more like it's not shooting at 5 a.m., but it's willing to go rebound or get a workout in with
Yeah.
somebody at 5 a.m. if they ask, and not trying to get them to go later. Like, it's making sure that I'm doing the right things as far as getting my work done and like little stuff like staying in shape or just being a good example with how you're taking care of yourself. I think especially during this time, like our players are watching how we're handling this, and they're watching how we're handling like the mental health side of it and the physical side of it and the work side of it. And however they perceive that is how they perceive it, but we have to try to lead as best we can through that right now.
No, I love it and well stated. So, as coaching right now, especially for what I would say is an impossible social distancing sport, like how has it been like transitioning to like Zoom calls or whatever you guys are doing to, get the point across? Like, give us an insight into what the challenges of coaching is right now.
100% a challenge, but everybody is being challenged by the same thing as far as our profession and trying to keep our kids improving. So there's a bunch of new NCAA rules, and trying to figure those out have been a bit of a challenge, but it's I'm not allowed to watch our girls work out on Zoom. I can suggest that they do stuff, but I'm not allowed to have them send results of a workout or
Interesting.
anything like that. So, there's definitely reasons for it, but it's more tricky because now you're hoping that you're motivating and getting them to do it on their own when it's harder to hold them accountable for it. It's just their words as far as what they're doing, but it's been it's been almost fun because you get to find different ways to
Yeah.
keep them entertained and keep them wanting to come back when you can't, do that like one-on-one with your voice
Right.
or anything like that when you have to do it through some different ways. So
And outside of the pandemic, what are some of the things that, like, this is what I found a lot, and then always hear on like ESPN, is that people that were really good players have a very hard time sometimes being coaches because like, I did this and it was that easy, or like in your head you're thinking that, and like there's either I don't think frustration is the right word, but just like not knowing how to articulate getting someone to the same way that you were able to get from that. Like, I'm sure that comes up a lot. Like, how have you dealt with that?
um, so the first year for sure, and then definitely a couple years after, I'm assuming,
Mm-hmm.
I was not very good at that. That was definitely like I wasn't sure how to cue or what things to say that resonated with a certain player to get them to do what I was doing. I can still demonstrate, which has been a challenge right now with the quarantine where I can't demo. I can watch film with somebody, but it's harder. It's not the same as being on the floor with them. So to start, I was like, well, I just showed you, like, why can't you do that? Why can't you just do exactly what I did? So it's been good. I'm lucky that I've learned from really good coaches and teachers
Yeah.
on how to cue and talk details. And it's kind of our job. If you're saying something and they can't figure it out, then you've got to say it a different way until they figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a learning experience for sure.
Yeah, piggybacking off that, I think the first time I really became a manager and managed multiple people, I remember how I was at the Intrepid, just at school at that newspaper when I was the
Yeah,
editor in chief, and man, that was hard. Like, I remember just being, for no reason, like mad and frustrated that you couldn't write in the way that I was thinking, and like my feedback was by no means constructive. Like, I think I was an awful manager, and I think when I got into the manager position, it was hard because there were things that I was, you get to become a manager because you're good at something, just like if you're a coach, you got there because you had some skills and knowledges. Articulating that is such a challenge, and what I've found out and talking to a lot of people during quarantine is it almost makes you, it checks if you're actually a good communicator or not during the quarantine, because you have to get things across
absolutely.
without being showing stuff. You have to do it all verbal, or sometimes it's like, here, you put your iPhone there and then you're FaceTiming in weird angles. And so yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely hear what you're saying. So the other, I think the interesting part to it is when we did the documentary, right? Like, this was based around Kobe doing work, a Spike Lee joint. And I told you that, and I told everybody, like, that's the angle that I want to take. When this was all done, like, how did you feel about it? Like, do you think it was a pretty fair, accurate interpretation of what happened that day and everything was going on? Were there things like you're like, ooh, Tony put that scene in there, I wish he would have taken that, or anything like that?
I could have probably done without the scene of me eating a bagel,
I knew
but
you were going to say
I got
that.
past that one. No, it was super accurate. I think for and obviously it was centered around basketball, but that was literally how I spent like every day. So it was super well done, super accurate. And I obviously the Kobe part has kind of a different meaning now than it did then, but
Yeah.
no, it was cool to go back and watch it, even though I hate watching myself on film and all of that. I've watched it once
Yeah.
or twice.
Actually, let's talk about that. I mean, so, you know, let's, to you, what is the legacy that Kobe has left?
I think it's two kind of different parts. I mean, obviously, as a player, you admired his skill is one thing, and he's probably one of the most skilled players to ever play the game. But it's also like his mindset and how he approached things and his work ethic and what he was willing to do to to get better. And then the second part of it is what he was starting to do for women's basketball. And
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
been a bit unique talking to, high school players and that type of stuff. Like they don't really remember Kobe as a player,
Mm-hmm.
like maybe I do. But they know Gigi as a basketball player,
Yeah.
and I think that was something I didn't really think about when the accident first happened. I didn't really think about that, and then talking to people, it's like, oh, I can't believe Gigi, where it's a completely different perspective. Like that's kind of somebody in women's basketball that they related to
Yeah.
maybe a little
Yeah.
bit more, whereas I would relate to Kobe more. So it's been kind of interesting to see the two sides of it for sure, the younger and the older
Yeah.
side of it. But for me, it was somebody you can always draw on as far as their work ethic and how far they were willing to go to perfect their craft.
Yeah, I think I wasn't the biggest Kobe fan only because from a pure basketball perspective, like Shaq was one of my favorite players growing up, and then I'm just a Clippers fan. So if you're a Laker, I'm allergic to that,
Yeah.
right? But the where Kobe actually won me over was post career. One of the interviews I saw him do, and I think it was like A-Rod, and he was talking about like he's expecting his post basketball career to be even better than basketball career, and like that was the Mamba mentality. And then the question was asked like from A-Rod, like why, like, or he was genuinely curious, like. Why Kobe would think that way, and his answer was that's always the goal that I've had. Like I've always gone for that next level, and he doesn't even take time ever to think about his career in a perspective, right? He worked hard. He got one more ring than Shaq. Like he did it all as a Laker, right? Like he did all the things that he wanted to do. And like I always love the Smush Parker line. It's like you don't have the credentials to talk to me, but like that was Kobe, right? Like it's
Yeah.
that Mamba mentality. I have so much more respect for like post career because like like yeah, and another part to it is one of the other families on the helicopter, Altabellis. I actually got to cover them at Orange Coast College. So,
Okay.
John was a coach that was super passionate, and his wife and kids always came. And I even interviewed his wife and daughter, and like it, 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 it was heartbreaking, but they would be the person to both fly in a helicopter together to go to a game and not miss that. And
Yeah.
like it's yeah, but Kobe's legacy, I think, like people need to realize is bigger than basketball. And to your point, like
100%.
I really think not many people have talked about. Well, maybe they have, but the women's basketball and what he was doing for it, like I think it's incredible. Was he one of the best ambassadors? I think so in the last couple of years, right?
Yeah, I think for sure. And obviously in women's basketball, we talk about it a little bit more than the general sports world. But I think just his willingness to take women's basketball players under his wing and to go to games and to coach his daughter and to make that push, I think did and was going to go a long way for our game and the growth of it. So hopefully we can get a couple more ambassadors like that to help out.
Yeah, for sure. So related to that, speaking of documentaries, right? Michael Jordan dropped a little 10-part episode for us during quarantine to
Just a little bit.
just kind of like say like, remember me? I was like here, and all you guys are still down here, kind of situation. What do you think of The Last Dance?
I loved it. It was pure entertainment.
Yeah,
There was obviously some stuff that you could, from like a basketball perspective or a player or a coach perspective, you could pick up detail wise, like to help you develop yourself. But I kind of tried to shut that side of my brain off and
yeah,
just take it in and just enjoy it. I could do with 10 more episodes of it.
I know. Yeah, I think it was one of my favorite parts actually was Michael Jordan talking about just Dennis Rodman in general. Like it's funny that he's
Loves
like
the Rodman stuff.
oh my god, it's like Jordan was like, really got to go to Vegas? Fine, like you come and you'll do rebounds, whatever, but like you do you. But like it's so funny that like I don't know, I've never been around or like covered somebody like a Dennis Rodman to a level of just like he'll be fine on the court, but like he does whatever.
Yeah.
So that was my favorite parts. The other favorite part too was I just genuinely didn't realize how much Michael like motivated himself to like win a game. Like I think it was
That was
B
my favorite part.
yeah, I think it was BJ too that said it, where I think it was like for Michael, it wasn't about playing the game; it was winning the game. Like at a certain point, it was just like being on the court, and I'm just gonna win. It doesn't matter what, who, how, what. I'm gonna win 50, 70 points, 2 points doesn't matter. I'm winning. That's a interesting attitude and mindset that I haven't really seen articulated that well. I've always heard like Kobe has the mom mentality, but like there was something there. So, as a former player and as a coach, like what do you take from somebody having kind of like that type of mindset?
So just his my favorite part is literally his ability to just turn or make up a story to
Yeah.
motivate himself, whichever, whether it was true or not, or how whatever he was explaining happened,
The
whether it
Washington
happened that
Bullets
way or
player, I
not.
forgot, but like he made up that
He
story
was
to
like, I
everyone.
didn't say that. I love that stuff. Like I feel like as in a college short, like 4-year college career, it might be different. You might just be motivated the whole time, but as you go further and further into something, you might have to find different ways to motivate yourself, whether it's making stuff up like that or not. And then the other like major takeaway for me was just how present he was with everything. Um, everybody else is kind of panicked or a little bit nervous, and he's literally just living in the moment for
Yeah.
every game, which I thought was probably the biggest takeaway for me. That was borderline enjoyment, borderline development side of it.
Yeah, for sure. The other like I don't know. So Jordan to me, I grew up watching him a little bit, but like it wasn't. I think I was just a bit too old to like remember more of Kobe than Jordan. Um, the the thing that I don't know if I think he still probably does it, but just an ongoing list that he has of like you and you're off of it. Like I don't know. That's I guess maybe that's why I didn't do that well in college sports or just sports in general. But like that type of mentality to me is like crazy, like assassin crazy. But like you see it all the time in sports, right? Like those type of players and people that are like that. Like I think it's a long-winded question to say like when you're a competitor and when you're an athlete, can you walk people through a little bit of that mindset and how like a player gets there and like just to give context to like for lack of better words like normal people why people can think that way in sports.
Um, I don't know. I do feel like to some extent you're making up who your rivals are, or
Yeah.
like I could have thought my whole college career that these two teams were like our biggest rivals and they didn't even know who we were.
Yeah.
That very well probably happened, but you do have to find different ways to motivate yourself. But it's like if you're working towards whatever your goal is, right? Some type of championship, individual team doesn't really matter. You've got to find ways to keep. There's got to be something that's worth chasing, or something that's chasing you. Either one, and I think just people who are super competitive and super motivated have one of those two, whichever it is.
Yeah.
And it might go back and forth. Sometimes you might be chasing something, and other times it might just be chasing something chasing you wherever you are in your career. But um, there's always one of those two things happening. And I think super competitive people realize that.
I I wanted to ask you. I've always actually wanted to ask you. Like, at any point in your bonus career, like I know I asked you a question. Like, do you remember how many threes you had or anything like that? You didn't seem like you were preoccupied with a lot of the stats, but like low key, were you like looking at stuff and like where you would be in the Bonaventure books and stuff like that?
Um, Low key, I knew like how close I was to certain stuff. Um, I think it helped that social media wasn't as big, so I
Yeah.
wasn't scrolling through Instagram or Twitter and
Yeah.
seeing countdowns or anything like that. Like we had like a whiteboard taped up on the side of the RC with like
Mm-hmm.
a countdown or something. I really tried not to, but um, if you got like three threes to break some sort of record, you might not know when you hit the third one in a game, and it might not probably never really clicked in
Yeah.
game,
Yeah.
but it was something that if I knew it was possible and I was chasing it, then I knew how close I was. once something like that became a reality, I think more so than like seeking that stuff out.
Yeah, for sure. What was your favorite memory playing at Bonus?
Oh, easily winning in the Sweet 16 or in the round of 32 to go to the Sweet 16. Like, I don't remember very many details. I remember
Yeah.
a couple moments. I remember the locker room. I remember some of the press conference stuff. Some of the, like, obviously we were down. We weren't only in New York for that, but I remember coming back and just being around Bonaventure when that happened. And obviously the men's team and Andrew had kind of a good, it was cool to just the excitement around Bonaventure and Bonnies you didn't know, who were throwing support your way was cool. So that's definitely like, that's kind of the obvious answer, but that is my favorite moment for sure.
Then is the other obvious answer your worst time when the next game happened after that?
Oh yeah, actually, to be fair, whatever. I felt much better after Notre Dame smacked Maryland maybe by like 40 the game after.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that to somebody I like remember watching. I didn't watch very much of that game because I didn't want to watch them play, but once I saw the score, I was like, okay, never mind. It's fine. But it was cool. I mean, you're playing against Skylar Diggins and playing against a team that Muffin McGraw is coaching. Like, not very many people can say that. So while it was not fun in the moment, maybe, or as fun as the game before, it was all right looking back.
No, I love it. The one thing that I think I was talking to my roommate Ryan about this when that happened is like I was very curious if this game happened with you having one more year of eligibility, what you would have been like the next season. Like I had this mentality of like, after seeing that game, because you were emotional, it was a hard game, and like you clearly were on your sleeve. I thought if you could play one more year, you would break all sorts of records, and it was gonna be like a Kobe Mamba mentality. I remember saying that. Like, did you after that game, like, did you start like talk to us, like what was the emotions, like what was your mindset at, like how did it all unfold after that?
I think the best, because obviously it like sucked getting our ass kicked like that. But I think the one thing that really helped was the way that Coach Crowley handled it right after, and his big message being nobody can take away the 30 however many games before in the season that we had, and that immediately became my mindset then as well. So I wasn't as worried about what had happened in that one game. I was more concerned about how awesome of a year we'd had and all the things that we'd done that nobody had ever done before. Had we have had one more year to come back and play, it would have, I think we would have. We were so motivated. I actually don't know, because we were so motivated heading into that year, feeling like we'd under a little bit, and that being the only goal that we had was to make the NCAA tournament. We kind of put everything collectively, everything that we had into making that run. So personally, I would have been in the gym like more if possible, but I have no regrets with how the last season ended for me, just because I don't think I could have done anything else or I wouldn't have changed anything. So I have no type of like looking back and any type of regrets on how it was handled.
That Coach Crowley knows something about a coaching, huh?
A little bit. Maybe. Yeah. Don't tell him I said that, though.
Yeah. No, it's I agree with him, and I agree with your assessment, because like nobody can take away from what you guys accomplished that season. Like I think I remember in the documentary, one of the lines you were like, I didn't even know if we're gonna have 100 people to our games, let alone I think what the game was like 1,500 people or something like that. Like the fact that you guys did all that, and it's not even about the records. I really think that season, what both teams accomplished is going to be something that we reflect back as like St. Bonaventure alumni and basketball fans of that program. Just like, this is unheard of for a school of this size to do in a collective way. And, I really am proud of that season. And I'm even more, as time goes by, glad that I filmed this documentary with you, because I think this is a moment where it was the ultimate underdog story, I think, like to a degree, and I'm glad I was a part of it, and I'm glad that we got to see a whole new side of you and like documented your journey. So yeah, I have very fond memories on this documentary.
Yeah, it was cool. I hope the same thing though. I hope it's, I still feel like it's not that long ago, so haven't really reflected on it, but I think as more time passes, it will be one of those things that doesn't happen very often, if at all, with the success of both programs like that at the same time. And obviously, there's something to be said about being the first group that got it done. So even if there are, more combos or duos like that to come, which hopefully there are, um, it's still fun to say you were kind of the ones who kicked it off, maybe.
Yeah. So in the documentary right now, it's a scene when you guys just entered the press conference. Um, I vividly remember at this moment for me, like this was. Walk us through when you literally heard. I asked you this in documentary too, but like when you heard that, like what went through your mind? Like Coach Crowley doesn't seem like the person that would be just like saying things like that ever.
No, not really. I very vividly remember being like, what? Like, I don't know why you just said that, but it was also the moment that I kind of believed it too, or that he said it, and I was like, oh, well, if he thinks so, then hopefully, or whatever. But it was, yeah, he doesn't throw stuff like that out very often. So it was kind of a little bit of a shock, I guess, more than anything, just to like hear him
Yeah.
say that, because that's not normally his MO. But to me, it was, once he said it, I was like, okay, then maybe I am in the conversation. But yeah.
All right. So how is Coach? Is he still the same person that I would remember? Has he softened up a bit? Like, is his face less red? Like, what's going on with him?
um, he's softened up a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. But he's very much back to um, Bonaventure Crowley.
Yeah.
As we keep telling our team now, like, this is what I think we try not to do, the like, oh, when we played blah blah blah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I hate when people do that, so we try not to do that too much. But every once in a while, it's like, you guys, like, he's way nicer to you than he was to us. And we've obviously got all three of us right now
Yeah.
to drive that point home. But he's as far as like the relationships he builds and the motivation that he's able to give to our girls, I think it's the same. We're obviously doing the same basketball stuff on
Yeah.
the floor, but it's been, it obviously have a great year last year, and we had a bit of success the years before, especially 2 years ago. So it's been it's a different perspective to see him as a coach, that's different than as a player. Like, now I get all the behind the scenes stuff
Right.
that I'm sure happened when I was playing, but you do get a different perspective, and you can kind of understand how his mind works a little bit more, rather than just seeing the end product that was
Yeah.
what I was seeing as a player on the practice floor in games. Now I get to see how he came to whatever realization it was, or whatever he says, kind of what went into that, which is that's been really cool. That's been one of my favorite parts of working for him and playing for him.
Good. Well, tell Coach and the rest of the staff that I said hi.
Uh,
It was so much fun covering you guys. Like, it was such an honor, and you guys were always okay with the kid with the video camera and always asking for quotes and stuff like that. So I had a blast, and yeah.
no, it was awesome. We were glad to have you tagging around a little bit.
So the documentary right now ended in the background, and it was like perfect because I think we were talking about Coach Crowley as you were reminiscing about like what he was like back then. But I wish nothing but success for you guys in your program. I am glad that you guys are all healthy, doing good. And yeah, like I guess go Friars.
Go Friars. Go Bonnies. Go Friars.
There you go. Jess, thank you so much for your time. Stay healthy.
Of course,
and
thanks, Tony.
yeah. And yeah, let's not let a pandemic be the last time we talk to each other. But
I got you.
all right. Have a good one.
All right. Bye.
Bye.